Welcome to the Business of Pharmacy podcast, where we explore the business of pharmacy through candid, in-depth conversations with the industry's top leaders. Every Monday, tune in for insights and stories you won't find anywhere else. I'm your host, Mike Kelzer. Leon, for those that haven't come across you online, introduce yourself to our audience.
I'm Leon Henderson-MacLennan, and I am the medical advisor for the firm InThought Research. We are a consulting firm, and we feature competitive intelligence, market research, and all of the underlying layers that make up those fields.
Now, Leon, when I hear about competitive intelligence, my mind automatically goes to James Bond or whoever. And thinking that in the movies I hear about it, and it's always like, you've got the formula for this, and that would be good for medicine, kind of the everlasting gobstopper, ingredients and so on. When you talk about intelligence, is it things like the structures, or like where are they going to go next with the drug of the competitors, or is it more like longer range kind of stuff? Because I imagine that the research and thinking you do is not probably Watergate stuff, right? It's probably stuff that's legal, but fishing around for it?
It's a lot of fishing around. What information is available that helps our client best develop their assets? Our clients are pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies. So they have a medicine, whether it's on the market or in clinical trials, and they need to protect it. They need to nurture it. They need to make it evolve. They eventually need it to make money, and they need it to make money in excess of that which they spent for R&D. So it's our job to take a look at that asset, understand what the competitive environment is for that asset, and evaluate both the possibilities for their asset as well as the possibilities for the competitor's assets. And they're always looking closely to understand what has their competitor done in the past, bring us up to date on everything that our competitor has done with asset X that we feel may be a threat to our asset. And that includes efficacy data, safety data, net benefit analysis, market analysis in terms of how much revenue this agent that is competing with our agent is or can expect to make by what time. All of that goes into intelligence that's required for the company that we represent to make their best decisions going forward.
One of my brothers, he has a branding company in California. You're out in LA, he's in San Francisco. I always joke with him that the CEOs of these companies, and even the CMO, the chief marketing and so on, it's like, Tim, why the hell do they hire you? Don't these guys have any skills on their own? And then I came to decide that it's something like, if things don't go the way we wanted them to, and I'm the CMO, I can blame it on Tim because I made a bad choice. I got the wrong consultant, but it doesn't make me as the CMO like totally worthless. I can just blame it on one decision. I always say that jokingly to him. And in your stuff, I'm like, the one thing I think that I don't see as being real easy that maybe I could joke about some CEO or CMO should just be doing this is that intelligence, is getting that information. And then it's, what does that information mean? Because there's plenty of information out there, but if the CEO and CMO could wave a magic wand, half of it might be getting the information you have, but then it's, where's this going? What does this mean?
That's really it in a nutshell. The next level. I mean, there are plenty of our competitors out there that I believe that is what they do, is that they give their companies that they're working with a lot of data, a lot of information, a lot of material, but the so what is really missing, and that is the area that we wanted to capitalize on when we formed this company. And we've been 10 years independent now. We're older than that, but as an independent company, we're now celebrating our 10th anniversary.
Congratulations.
And we have always seen that need for reliable interpretation of information. Conversations like this is what we want to have with our clients. We are not in the business of handing them all the secondary research, all the data that are out there. Yeah, sure, they could do it themselves. In a perfect world, we know that the world is imperfect, and think about it this way. They're hiring people all the time as their company is growing to do a better and better job with the different silos that they have within their organization. And eventually, they don't have enough resources to do that extra step. And that's why they come to us to not only give them the data, not only give them a trove of paper or megabytes.
Yeah, right.
But where does that fall into context historically? Where will it fall into context in the future? And most importantly, why do you say that? And there's plenty of times where, we're supporting our theses that we run into some friction. Have you considered X, Y, and Z that is sort of in diametric opposition to what we're saying? Yes, we've thought of that. Hopefully we'll have a comeback for that. And it's the conversation that we have, even if it's an argumentative conversation, that really makes them feel, one, that we are interested in what they are doing, and two, that we're prepared to back up what we say, and that there are maybe a couple of camps about why this bit of data means X to us and Y to them. Let's see where it falls out as new data are accumulated to influence the data that we're managing at the time. So that process is near and dear to us, and it's something that has separated us from a lot of our competitors in our clients' eyes. And to that end, we've also spun out a company, InThought, that is a knowledge management company taking advantage of big data and artificial intelligence. And we're bringing that to bear on the way that we manage the morass of data that folks in pharmaceuticals and biotech need to manage to make the decisions that are best for their assets and organization.
It makes me think, I hear this question once in a while, like, what would you do if you could go back 200 years? You're the only one that gets to go back. And I always think, oh, crap, why'd they pick me as a human to go back? Because I could say 200 years from now, they're going to have electric light bulbs and they're going to have computers and they're going to have rocket ships and stuff. And then the people are going to look at me and they say, well, how do we do this? I'm like, I don't know. I've seen it, but you've got the wrong guy. And it's just an example in my head of the ideas, even the future guessing and all that kind of stuff. It's okay, but what does a company do with that information? And in this example, an invention or something like that. So that's certainly a huge part of it, because anybody can sit back and have ideas. And if it's always in the future, you can't really be proven wrong. By that time, you've taken the money and run. But when they're asking you, how do we get there, Leon? Well, now the second day you're there after the big presentation, now you're moving and they get to see the proof is in the pudding.
It's interesting because, once you want to get into that Wayback Machine, then they want to pull you right back into the present, because so much of what we're saying about the future, to a certain level can't be challenged. However, we know that, well, if I'm going to go Mark Twain on us, although history doesn't repeat itself, it certainly rhymes.
Right.
So we can look at history, and the predictive value of the past may be limited, but we have to understand how it is limited, bring that to bear on our evaluation, and not talk about how history will repeat itself, but how it will rhyme. Okay? If we were going back, here's how it would look. But you know what? We're not going back. You have 3 other competitors that we haven't even talked about yet that would not have been there had we just gone back. So now let's take these into consideration and apply that same set of learnings so that we can understand how the future may rhyme. And we will give not just one scenario, it's a situation of scenario analysis, and evaluate the, let's say, 3 or 4 possible outcomes in the future. Let's say if you're looking at 3 other assets that are going to influence the future, what if 2 make it to market? What if 1 makes it to market? What if you are the first mover in this space because all the other 3 do not? So you analyze those possibilities, and that gives, I think, everyone a better sense that you are robust.
As I think back to the first iPod, it was about the size of a half of a brick, and it had 10,000 songs, something like that. Wouldn't Apple have been happy to say they invented this and here it is? And that would be like my offering to the future from 200 years ago. But then it's like, that doesn't stop there, obviously. And then you're thinking, well, I know it's going to keep getting smaller. That's what people want. So you come up with the iPod Shuffle. They were the size of a little bit bigger than a postage stamp. No one likes them because if you're out for a jog, you didn't know what button did what and that kind of stuff. And so then they start getting bigger again. And so knowing the past and knowing the future doesn't do much unless you can look at those 3 competitors at the same time.
It's all about, putting in the right inputs to make your analysis more sticky. And then being flexible when another piece of data comes down the road, you're able to incorporate that into your analysis and pivot if need be, because the faster, obviously, you're able to do that. And this is really important when you're consulting with a larger pharmaceutical company that intrinsically has limited flexibility compared to a smaller, more nimble biotech, let's say. It's very important there that we get those nuanced analyses correct and that we're ready to pivot, because once that goes up the tree, don't forget also the people up in the C-suite need a very quick pitch.
A quick pitch.
To say that we should base our decisions on this particular analysis. Our direct client, which might be in business development or might be in their internal competitive intelligence arm, they'll have a little bit more time to analyze our analysis, and we have to make them comfortable with it such that when it does go up the ladder and it's pitched quickly, it's pitched properly.
Leon, I imagine when you make that movement then through the beginning of the C-suite and their direct reports and then moving up through the C-suite and so on, is there anybody that it comes up and the marketing guy, you can tell he's jealous or pissed, and not so much at the idea, but the fact that maybe there's information that they haven't thought of?
This is an interesting question. I'm laughing because this is a historical moment right now. From time to time, we've had moments such as this where perhaps we are not trusted initially, okay, I'll say, and in climbing the ladder, are our ideas pitched with faith as we go up? Are they faithfully reporting up the chain?
Because you're not always there, right?
We're not always there for it, and we're like, wow, boy, they've made this particular decision, and wow, that didn't seem, it seemed like our material was advancing and moving up and so forth, but that wouldn't have been the result of this maneuver. And there we have to come back to the client and address this going forward. And that's a decision that sometimes they have to make, whether I don't know, if it's because of untoward feelings, as you're saying, towards us personally, business-wise, whatever the case might be. And we have to be willing to accept that and to stand our ground, if you will, going forward, and reiterate at that time that, well, here, remember, we offered this particular analysis, which would engender this particular activity on your company's behalf. And we see that, let's say, that clinical trial was designed in a manner that wouldn't demonstrate some novel endpoint that would see them best approach their target product profile. Instead, took a very quote-unquote conservative approach where you'll look like everybody else. Maybe there's some fear and trepidation, whatever the case might be, or they don't want to move forward quickly, but often we have no way of knowing that. So I'll return to my laughter, is because, well, we had a situation such as this, I mean, literally in like 7 or 8 iterations of our company ago. And again, we'll not mention the company that was involved, but suffice it to say that people were livid and they did not like what we were discussing at all. And they made it clear to us, this company made it clear to us, that our analysis was flawed at best and downright malpractice, I guess, at worst. And we sat on it. Okay, here's what they think. We're starting out as rookies, so don't forget at this time, we're not making the revenue that we want to make, and we don't even know if we're going to actually make it in the industry. But suffice it to say, that was our entree into actually vaulting onwards and upwards at the time, literally 25 years ago, when monoclonal antibodies, let's say, were just becoming competitive in the oncology market. And boy, we were up there with Satan and his disciples as far as these folks were concerned, but they had to, over drinks, it would be groveling, but it was probably less than groveling, but they had to eat crow. And we ended up on some very big platforms, media-wise, and that sort of vaulted us into the accelerated pathway that we've been on. So, yeah, so far, so good.
Do some people bring you along for that ride up the ladder? Like, hey, Leon does a hell of a lot better job than I do in expressing this. Would somebody say, hey, Leon, let's go to these 3 meetings over 2 weeks and we're going to end up at the board meeting? Or I imagine one trepidation of that is they don't want to make you look too smart, or else they're like, what am I doing at this point? But do some people bring you all the way up physically to the board meeting?
On occasion, we'll hit the road shows, and this is one of the benefits of having been in one iteration before InThought sell-side analysts. So we have been used to that type of activity, that type of pitch, constant pitch for a few days, visiting different investor groups, and making our analysis known. And so although it's happened less frequently as we've grown, it's still part of one of the activities that we can certainly do. And we really cherish those moments, of course, when we're given the opportunity.
Does anything ever get you pissed off in the process, either at a person or yourself or your team or someone you're reporting to? Does anything ever get under your skin with the obstinance maybe of some people in that process?
If I'm not constantly pissed off, I'm at least constantly skeptical. I have a reputation as the greatest skeptic known to humankind. I really try to take every bit of information with a grain of salt. I am most agitated when a company appears to be drinking their own Kool-Aid, and overestimating the degree to which their assets may have an influence given what is actually on the table at the time.
Like a pharmacy thinks their business is worth a hell of a lot more than it is when they go to sell it.
So those type of things that can definitely happen. Are you overvaluing your asset? So at once, I'm pissed, but of course, that gives an opportunity to gently reevaluate the processes. And I always know that when I do have those emotions, when I am agitated, when I am skeptical, when I don't see why something is being developed in the way it is being developed, or even a whole sub-industry, perhaps, a whole therapeutic area, that is opportunity. I know that I need to then rein myself in and bring these disparities to my colleagues, to my team, and I need to articulate that which doesn't meet the eye.
You either adjust down or you increase your argument. You know where the soft spots are and where you have to do better.
Absolutely. And it puts a check and balance, I think, out there for me, because I always have to be prepared to be wrong. And I have no problem with that. That means, okay, I have to see why my client is thinking that way. I have to see why the opposition of my client, the competitor to my client, is thinking that way. I have to put myself in either the client's shoes, the competitor's shoes, or both.
Absolutely.
To understand why I have that visceral reaction. Okay. And that's going to help my conversations. That's going to help my team's conversations. That's going to help us represent our client that much better. It just really engenders a great deal of excellent conversation, and it helps us understand when we're talking with the client about it, or when we're talking to the client about their competitors. It helps us understand that we care. It helps us understand whether the client really cares or whether the competitors really care. When it is emotional like that, the worst thing to happen is when that is lacking in any way, really, honestly. It's when it is neutral, it's just going about business and business as usual, which really, pharmaceuticals, biotechs really should never be that way.
There's
it
no
should
such
always
thing.
be a little volatile, a little controversial.
Absolutely.
By its very nature. By its very nature, it's a competitive whirlwind industry.
It reminds me of when we were building like 20 years ago our house, and we were in our city, but the builder was from the city next door, and they built our fireplace, and the inspector came from our city and said, no, this isn't right, because you have to have the mantle's got to be so many degrees and wide from where the fire actually is if it's wood and this is stone and all that. And I remember them being pissed, our builder being pissed about it, and I thought, hey, good. What better thing to be pissed about than is your fireplace safe with the inspector? So I thought, wonderful.
Yep.
But Leon, on skeptical stuff, my wife, God bless her, but she'll say some things and she always catches me with my phone underneath the counter looking up Wikipedia to double check her, and she doesn't like that. And I say, Margaret, my job as a pharmacist is to be skeptical of every prescription that comes through. I don't get to beautify a prescription by putting flowers on it and stuff, and I can take pride in how I'm talking to the patient about it and how I might bring up ideas about their health. But in general, I have to look negatively at everything I do. So I just blame my skepticism on the profession. I'm a perfect husband. It's just the profession that is giving me problems.
I like that. I was literally going to do the same thing as you were saying that, because it wasn't until a year and a half ago that I wasn't practicing still. So I'm an internist and a medical geneticist.
Absolutely.
And skepticism is our middle name because we always have to battle on behalf of the patient. We always have to battle on behalf of, is this the proper benefit to risk ratio that we can accept? to make life better for them. And that's what it comes down to. I mean, that's, when you were saying that, I had to laugh because I say the same thing. And as a matter of fact, it's how my business partner and I met. Ben Weintraub, we had the typical MD versus PhD argument and
sure.
Ended up shaking hands. Let's work together at the dinner afterwards. And that's how we have approached a lot of our business going forward too. We want to get into those scraps.
That's an interesting point because when you have a company with two founders, I wouldn't go into business with somebody unless I had to, or unless I knew there was very complementary puzzle pieces that fit mine, not the same. Around the pharmacy, I hire a bunch of yes people. I like yes people. I told my wife I had to get rid of somebody a few weeks ago or something, and I gave her some reason. She's like, oh, you just didn't like that she didn't say yes all the time? I said, yeah, that's right.
Well, there you go.
But when it's a partner, when it's someone that you're reaching to the stars with, you don't need a yes person, and you don't need someone with the same skills. You need those complementary ones. So that's cool that you both saw the value of that.
Oh, and that was just the beginning. This was, again, a quarter century ago. This was after I thought I was making good money consulting while I was still doing my fellowship in medical genetics. When I was able to pay off my loans and whatnot, and a good friend of mine said, you are being robbed. You need to start a business. And, that's the nidus of the meeting with Ben Weintraub. And like you said, it's key to fly with someone that you can battle with. So that just started at that moment. And then we brought in Chris Martin, who is now looking at our InThought project, the knowledge management platform that I was talking about. So then we were three, and literally through the next 6 or 7 iterations, we picked up someone from each of those iterations to build InThought. Little did we know that it was going to be InThought at the time, but it was always someone with whom we could have a long conversation and not always agree, but at least see all the nuanced sides to an argument that we may not have had before. And I needed a lot of help in not being a business person myself. I need smarter people than me. I need collaborative people with me, and I need someone who, or many ones, who were thinking along the same lines in terms of we have to be passionate about what we're doing, and we can't lose our humanity in doing so. We can't be robots. We still have to be dedicated to our families and friends. We work hard, we play hard, and we literally picked up someone at every stop with that same spirit that turned us into InThought when we were with Reuters and Wolters Kluwer after that. And then it was Thomson Reuters, then it was Symphony Health, and picked up someone along the way, and then spun out of that organization 2009 and 2014, bought ourselves out, and here we are today. But yeah, we have a nice core team. We have a great company culture that keeps us going.
When were you least correct in an idea? Maybe you didn't share it all the way with somebody, but when were you the least correct in something you held close, whether it was something physical, like a certain drug should do this, or whether it was a direction you thought a company should take, that somehow you found out you were wrong, or at least maybe your decision wasn't the best one?
That is an intriguing question. I'm going to start with, let's put it this way. We had one company that was our takeout candidate of the year. They were going to get acquired 15 years ago, 14 years ago, 13. 12, 6, 4, 2. They're still independent, and they're still mostly thriving. They were attractive to others, and they remained attractive to themselves. Hit a couple of stumbling blocks, but overall continue to grow. That one comes to mind immediately because we laugh about it all the time, and we laughed about it the other day.
And that one there is one that you thought they'd be better off acquired. That would be the road to success.
We thought, one, it would be better, and two, all the historical stars, if you will, guided us in that direction. It was a biotech, and it's still a biotech, and has grown through everything and withstood quite a bit.
Who put the brakes on that one?
That's an interesting question, and for the lack of a better individual, I'm going to call it the marketplace. I am going to call it shrewd management around headwinds and navigation of sometimes muddied waters, and most often with a clear sense of direction. And it wasn't through any miscalculation of ours, but it's certainly, when you're talking to an investor, you're not always looking, of course, to do so because of that possibility. And for us, it was a probability. Nevertheless, it can't be ignored in conversation. Fortunately, although it wasn't the massive wins necessarily for folks that we spoke with, still they were able to win.
When do we take that plunge, kind of, and then it just never happened?
Yeah, despite a lot of fences in the opposite direction, they just muddled through, stuck to their guns, and I don't know everything happening behind the scenes, Of course. Just persevered.
Yeah. Leon, what is your deliverable to these companies? Is it like a day where you show up and say, here's what I'm thinking? Is it just always a drip and you don't really have a final project date where you present this? What is the end of, and I'm sure you'd like to keep companies on too, but what are some of the bigger markers of a deliverable, whether it's a paper or a presentation or what?
Yeah, there are many deliverables. I think our core deliverables really are what we call competitive monitoring reports. Those are typically landscape analyses, including all of the assets that are competing with the ones our particular client is developing. So a competitive monitoring report would have all the assets listed from marketed all the way down to paid. Usually phase one, but a lot of early folks like the preclinical and research columns as well. Within there, you're going to, of course, look at the timing of events. For instance, for the developmental compounds, we'll have timeline analyses of when events are anticipated to happen, whether they're announced or whether they're modeled. It can be, the timing of trial completion, the primary completion date of the trial, when data might be available for, which meetings might those data be presented at, which will be top line, which will be more mature data, and on down the pike. And of course, regulatory milestones. When is the NDA or BLA going to be submitted? And will it be a normal review or will it be an accelerated approval process? Why is that? And, we map that out on a PowerPoint presentation. We would love to have people shift to our Infonesis-related knowledge management system depiction of it. We think that's the wave of the future, rather than always having it on something that needs to be changed constantly. We want it to be in a reservoir where there is some automaticity behind those changes. That's what we've made available for those particular competitive monitoring reports. Within the competitive monitoring report, we also want to have what's called a state-of-the-art assessment. How are things looking today Some people will want how will things be looking in 3 years, 5 years, given market dynamics and data readouts and so forth. So we'll provide that. Target product profiles are something that we like to establish as well. How close is a developmental product looking to its expected label or package insert? So looking at all of the segments of the package insert and benchmarking where the developmental asset is in terms of reaching that aim. We do conference coverage, so a lot of deliverables have to do with conference coverage. That's where we get a lot of good secondary and primary research. For instance, right now we have ASCO going on, American Society of Clinical Oncology. You also have ENDO going on, the endocrinology meetings at this time, but we typically have at least a couple of people on the ground covering those meetings, and also the analysts from our company covering the meetings for specific clients as well. So conference coverage is big.
It's kind of a hand-holding and adjusting the rudders as you go. You might say, we think of going here, but kind of a hand-holding.
Absolutely. So if you have a 1-year contract with us, get your feet wet contract, we'll, let's say, offer 5 or 6 conferences that we feel are appropriate for coverage. And we'll do the pre-conference report. We'll run or be part of the daily debriefing after presentations are made for the day. And of course, develop a top-line conference report that's immediately available, and then 1 week or 2 after the conference as well. That's our typical conference coverage. There are nuances of that we want to fit for the client. There's revenue forecasting, as I was talking about, as well as probability of approval modeling. Those are 2 other types of deliverables that clients have found valuable going forward.
Is that conference, is that something they're presenting, or they're just trying to soak some stuff up, information and so on?
It's usually both.
Both.
It's usually both. Usually the client have a couple of presentations, and there, I think our big value is looking at things from the outside and helping them understand how their material was perceived in the marketplace by various stakeholders, and also certainly how their competitors are faring as well. What are people saying about their competitors? Are their competitors on track to continue their development as we have predicted, or are they altered? Are they moving slower? Are they not enrolling their trials as quickly? Are they enrolling their trials ahead of schedule? Yes, we always want to ensure that they understand all the dynamism that is behind the drug development landscape that they're facing. So yes, it's always dynamic. It's not a one-stop, here's all the deliverables, thanks for playing anyway. No, it's an ongoing conversation because life in drug development is ongoing. And that's where we provide the value.
What's the word I'm looking for? Not spying that your company does, but you give...
Gathering intel.
Intel. That's
really
now
it.
That sounds fancy. All right.
Gathering intel.
The intel. Am I going to see Leon pop up from a trash bin in the back alley of some company, or is it meeting in the parking garage at 11:30 at night? What kind of intel are we talking about? And I imagine sometimes there's a lot of good intel that's right out there, but either it's a puzzle piece and so you don't realize it's intel, or it just took a little dig in and it's out there. What kind of intel? And just so you know, the follow-up question is going to be, tell me your most daring intel gathering.
The gamut. It runs the gamut from the absolute mundane, day-to-day, here's a press release, we're cool, we're just the greatest company in the world.
Yeah.
Here our conclusions is this is the greatest data in the world. Okay, it is really excellent data. May not change the world, but it'll advance the asset and it'll get you to where you want to be. Those are the classic ones. On the other side of the coins are the ones that we're the greatest company. Look at us. This may not have met its primary endpoint, but you know what? There was a subset of folks that upon retrospective analysis, we achieved X.
this is those companies you're reading their press releases and things? Is that what that is?
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So let's say it's the competitor of our client's asset, right? And here they are saying all of these things. We have to determine whether X is really something that's not the primary endpoint that'll take it forward. Let's say it's a phase 2 trial, or it's just like, oh my God, the Kool-Aid that's being served here is just tasteless.
I joke, I don't do this, but people will say, how's so-and-so as an employee? And pretending like they weren't a good one, I'll say things like, oh, I just can't say enough good things about him. Or there's nobody here that works quite like he does, those kind of things. But I imagine there's a lot of lingo you're reading between the lines on these things.
There is. And those are the beautiful secondaries that come out on a daily basis. We're evaluating those possibilities, trying to separate the wheat from the chaff and trying to help understand which one.
And they might have mentioned something about first quarter something or other. Now here it is the third quarter. That didn't happen. And in the history of this company, do they always do this, or what did they miss? That kind of stuff. It's stuff right out in the open, but you're piecing that together.
Putting it into context in that. Yeah, exactly. And that's a really good one. We've had one company that has been stalled in delivering their data for several months now, and that is agitating certain constituency that would like to give them more money, but is sitting on the sidelines.
So, Leon, your company structures, it's cool. It sounds like you bring pretty high skill in when you need it. And I know that you were talking about the knowledge company. Are there going to be any more peel-offs that come that you think is more of a specialty in your company that maybe need its own area?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. And as a matter of fact, we are already going down that road because pharmaceutical companies, we've been talking about biotechnology companies. We've gone from very tried and true, but not nimble, to very nimble biotechs. But there's a stage before that that needs to be addressed. When you're talking about moving from the scientific bench to the patient's bedside, it all starts with discovery. Someone feels that they have an idea and someone feels they can take it forward. They don't even know whether they need to be incorporated to do that or just how to get that. There are just so many smart people in this country and so many smart people at the universities developing technologies, developing drugs, developing various assets that are going to help people over time. So we've spun out a company called Aspire, S-P-I-R-E, okay, and solely dedicated to this early stage development. And I think we help people and bring assets forward, bring ideas forward, answer the questions for them of where do we go from here? What do I need to do to get my drug or device going further? Sometimes it's a matter of incorporating straight away. Sometimes it's a matter of outlining a time frame for them to go forward. But the head of this arm, Jaya Pearson-Leary, is just energetic and thoughtful about how we can move people with great ideas forward. I mean, there's a lot of coordinated efforts at various universities, for instance. There's think tanks and even entrepreneur-based modes to move them forward. Yet, there's a piece missing. There's a piece missing in terms of helping them develop presentations that get proper funding going forward, helping them understand next steps. So we've actually, and Jaya's led this, approached these incubators. They need help in doing this as well. And it's a wonderful start. It can be a cash business. It can be an equity business for us. And we're extraordinarily excited about this new opportunity as well.
Yeah, imagine that whole play of equity and cash in that. I was just listening last night. Do you remember Jewel, the folk singer with the blonde hair and the crooked tooth? I can say crooked tooth because I looked it up today. I'm like, why didn't Jewel ever get her tooth fixed? And it's her trademark. It's her trademark kind of thing. But she was saying that on her first album, it was either she could get $1 million up front or have back-end revenue on it. And she said the reason she didn't take the $1 million is because she considered herself an artist. And sometimes artists have to build. And sometimes artists don't have a great selling on their first one. So that's that with Jewel. Well, golly, Leon, thanks for joining us. That was fun to see the structures of these companies because there's a lot of strong ideas, a lot of emotions, a lot of personalities in there too. Ideas and movement are not always easy, so it's cool to see how that all came together. I know you're a busy guy. I appreciate your time. Our listeners appreciate it, and pleasure to meet you. I look forward to seeing where everything goes.
Thank you very much, Mike. The pleasure is mine, and happy to see where everything goes with your podcast, too. I've enjoyed them.
Oh, thank you very much. All right, Leon, very good. Take care. You've been listening to the Business of Pharmacy podcast with me, your host, Mike Kelzer. Please subscribe for all future episodes.